The Perspective with Deji Owotumi.
Nearly 3 decades after the return to democracy, many Nigerians are still asking the same questions. Why does poverty persist? Why is the insecurity worsening? And why do public services continue to fall short despite years of rising government spending? As the road to 2027 begins, those questions are becoming harder to ignore. First, this report.
The scale of the crisis is difficult to overstate. Nigeria's public debt stands at 156.28 trillion naira. This year alone, servicing that debt will consume $11.6 billion. That's more than the government spends on education, healthcare, and agriculture combined. The World Bank released new figures just weeks ago. Nearly 8 in 10 Nigerians, roughly 198 million people, are poor or vulnerable to poverty. A third of the country is ultra poor, unable to meet basic food needs. And with 35 million facing acute hunger this lean season, the depth of the crisis is measured not just in statistics, but in daily desperation. Security has worsened, not improved. Between May and July alone, 124 school children and students were abducted across 3 states. Many remain missing. School abductions, once shocking, have become routine. But the central question isn't whether the crisis is real, it's why. Resources are flowing into Nigeria, foreign reserves have risen, tax collection has improved, yet none of this is translating into relief for ordinary citizens. Here's the mechanism. Over 3 years, 41% of Nigeria's federation revenues, roughly 34.5 trillion naira, has been absorbed into pre-allocation deductions before ever reaching state governments. These are statutory charges, but the scale is extraordinary and the scrutiny is weak. Money that could fund schools, hospitals, and social programs instead disappears into systems citizens cannot fully account for. The questions Nigerians have been asking for decades aren't answered by growth rates or reserve balances. They are answered by what reaches the ground. And right now, very little is reaching ordinary Nigerians, despite resources at hand.
You're welcome back. ActionAid Nigeria's latest findings document worsening poverty and insecurity alongside mounting public debt. But the real indictment isn't just the numbers, it is the accountability gap. The organization argues that weak fiscal governance and inadequate parliamentary scrutiny are allowing public resources to leak away from the people who need them most. Now, these are the issues that need to be on the front burner as we approach the general elections in 2027. Joining me to discuss what needs to change is Dr. Andrew Mamedu, Country Director of ActionAid Nigeria. Dr. Mamedu, welcome to The Perspective.
Thank you, Deji.
All right. ActionAid's vision speaks of dignity, social justice, and freedom from poverty. By those standards, what is your assessment of the current leadership of the country?
Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, ActionAid is about the people. It's about the Nigerian citizens, particularly those living in poverty and injustice. So any assessments I'm going to be doing will be
from the perspective of the people.
The people, yes. The government, the current government, you'll be looking at it from the federal, the states, and the local government. You could also be looking at it from the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. Yeah, so from the president, which is normally where everybody focuses on, so all eyes, all fingers points to the president. The president came in with lots of promises, and he did hit the ground running. He said he was going to hit the ground running, and the way he hit the ground, unfortunately, it's affected lots of people that we are talking about today, the poor and the vulnerable. So the subsidy was removed, the unification of the exchange rate. Right. So all of those had effects on the economy and on the people.
The ripple effect.
So the ripple effect, of course, affected, the ripple effect, of course, cuts across the whole economy, people, and all that. And the people that are worst hit are the poor and the vulnerable. So if you want to assess the president from their perspective, we can say that it didn't go down well with the poor and the vulnerable. So fast track, 3 years down the line now, we have still not totally recovered. However, there are indices, there are indicators that says that, oh, inflation has dropped to 15.3%, the GDP is now growing at a bit faster rates. So there are those positive indicators, which are things that we should be happy about. But the positive indicators, the GDP growing, the macro level indicators, is not the same thing with the micro level indicators. So there is again the lag between what is happening at the macro level and what should be happening at the micro level. So if you want to judge the man on the street, the woman on the street, the child on the street would be able to say that we are getting our food a bit more expensive than we had it the last time. That inflation is 15 point something from maybe almost 30% when it came in, does not necessarily mean that prices of things are not increasing. Right. It just means that it's increasing at a lower rate. So if you bought something at 100 naira today, same time next year, it's going to be 115 or 116 naira. So it just means that prices of things will still be increasing. So for the president, yes, he was able to put out measures, get more money, distribute these resources to the states. The governors are saying that, oh yes, we're getting more resources. So all the governors are saying that this is the best president I've had because they're getting more resources. But at some point, the president also told them that you have to water the ground. You have to let the rain touch the people. So how are these monies that are getting to the governors, how is it translating into the lives of everyday Nigerian? The president alone will not be able to deal with this, right? So the 36 states, the federal system which we operate, the local governments, they have a role to play. They're getting more resources. So how are these resources then translating and getting to the hands of the people? Well, by and large, the Nigerians, we can say clearly, are still saying that they are not getting the impact of what good governance ought to be.
Right. On that note, recently President Tinubu argued and was telling governments that they should prioritize projects that directly improve lives rather than unnecessary flyovers. That's a direct quote from him. Your ActionAid agreed with that view. Can you tell us why?
For us, projects that directly affect lives are not flyovers. Flyovers for us, we see it as a metaphor from the president. So invariably, the president is saying that let us implement projects that impact the lives of people. And for us, if you want to interpret what flyovers are, flyovers would be unnecessary security votes. Flyovers would be unnecessary expenditure by the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. Flyovers would be flying private jets by government officials. Flyover will be 20, 30 officials traveling for a meeting, an international meeting that two persons would have been able to go. So that is our interpretation of flyover. So the president was speaking our mind. We would do better with higher resources, but we would definitely get out of where we are right now if the resources we have is better managed. So when we are arguing that the president got a presidential jet, you remember, we had that fight, we had that whole debate. Until today, nobody has told us if they got the Senate or the House of Assembly's appropriation to be able to acquire that. Because at some point, the National Assembly pulled out of that process. But of course, we still went ahead to get the presidential jet. So that's a flyover on its own. So flyovers are those expenditures that we could do without, that would have been able to translate the resources into better things that would impact the lives of people. So how about those resources being used for welfare, for education, for healthcare, for welfare packages? We have the social intervention program. How about those? Till today, this president has come in and we still don't have our school feeding program running across the country. So the last administration, the late President Buhari's administration, at least for a while, we had school feeding program running, and it was able to keep people, it was able to deal with issues of malnutrition to some extent. Yeah, to some extent.
In my mind, I recollect very clearly, it was also mired in controversy in some states.
When it started, it was working. But of course, there were a lot of controversies, as it is always the case, which is one of the biggest problems we have. The biggest problem is the issue of accountability, both the demand and the supply side. So citizens being able to hold government to account. The difference between policies and programs that are effective in the United Kingdom and what is not effective in Nigeria is simply all around accountability.
I know you have broadened, the conversation about flyovers beyond flyovers, and you use it as a metaphor to further express and talk about other issues. But the governors usually say that these are the things their voters reward. There seems to be something that propels them to continue to do these flyovers because people look at it and say, this administration is working. What do you make of that?
So development is not only about physical infrastructure. So the first thing about development is how is it impacting in the daily lives of the people? The standard of living, standard of living of the average citizen in the state or in the country, has it improved? The cost of living, is it reducing? So I think those are the indicators we look at. But because the polity, so it's a case, it's not just the government, so it's about the opposition, so about the policy, and about how the government pushes the narrative, the agenda. So when you talk about religious intolerance, when you talk about level of intolerance between cultural diversity in culture, languages, and all of that, how that affects the whole polity. It is an agenda that is also driven by the government and the people running the government. So if the government drives the narrative around, oh, flyover is a positive thing, is something, but if we drive the agenda, why would you go to a place like Japan that is highly developed, but they value education and health very well? So they will rate you based on your ability and how you have delivered education and health than infrastructure that you've seen.
People in the civil society space advocate for data-driven spending. But then in my head, what just comes is we haven't had a census, which should perhaps be the baseline in about 20 years. What do you make of this?
So the last time we had census,
2006.
2006. So that's 20 years. Right. 20 years ago, and clearly we are due for census. The last administration before late President Buhari left, I think we were planning to have census. We needed about a trillion naira to run the census, but we need to run census. So now with a country running its affairs based on estimation, it just gives us a whole lot of speculations. So people are skeptical. It's a political tool anyway, any day. Right. So if you want to run census, so our allocations, the FAC allocation is based on several parameters. One of them is the population. Right. So people would use that as a factor, as a basis. There are lots of migration, rural-urban migration. So a lot of migrations happening. How many persons do we have in the FCT today? How come, yes, the FCT ministers seem to be doing a lot of infrastructure, but those level of infrastructure, are they adequate for the population we have today? Because we don't know the population we have. We just estimate and we just think that it's okay. Oh, it's the resources we have. Let's manage what we have and push that. Even in terms of our taxation, for the benefit of the government, in terms of taxation, if you know that this is the population we actually have in this location, within Gariki or within Maitama, this is the population we have in this location. So the tax estimate from this bracket should be about this. It gives government the further room to plan and to engage in the whole of this process. But if we don't, it's going to keep affecting us. But the most important thing is government recognizing and prioritizing the political will for them to do it and be able to effectively. And I'm aware there are lots of development actors, development partners that are interested in this and that are invested in it. They are willing to support us to some extent as a country in running the census, because it helps also in development work eventually that we also do. And we know that where do we focus our energy? Where do we have less of this gap or more of this gap that we can focus our energy?
Is Nigeria poor, or we're poor at managing the resources that we have?
Both, but the latter is more of the case. So Nigeria is poor. In a country where you have, the World Bank says that about 60-something% of our population is poor. In a country where you have multidimensional poverty at about 133 million as at 3-4 years ago. In a country where about 30-something million persons are said to be suffering from malnutrition. in a country where level of insecurity is increasing by the day, that affects the level of poverty. So you can say that yes, Nigeria is seen to be poor, but this is further exacerbated as a result of the poor management of our resources. That is why organizations like ActionAid, we believe that poverty is human-made. We believe that poverty can be eradicated.
Right.
It can be eradicated. And do you know that there are countries in this world that do not have poverty? In the sense of poverty, our definition of poverty. So if you say you want to take it at $2 a day or $3 a day, there are countries that the average citizens in those countries, they've gone above the $2-3 a day.
It sounds quite idealistic when you say poverty can be eradicated. I was going to ask you, ActionAid, with your activities in Nigeria for some time, what's your perception of the progress we're making with regard to defeating poverty?
So we are investing a whole lot at the macro level,
right,
but not as much as in the micro level. So there is a difference between all the investments we have. So the things that would actually deal with poverty, we are not investing so much in those. So rather, we would focus on what are we doing about the roads, the airport, so the Lagos Calabar coastal road, so the rail, all of those are very good, those are beautiful. But what about what happens between community A and community B, or community A and the urban center, the state capital, the road in those locations, that we need to move our food from those locations where you have 60-70% of Nigerians being involved in farming, one farming or the other, right? What happens in those kind of cases? What happens with the level of insecurity that is keeping away children from school? Or what happens with the level of insecurity that is keeping away farmers from the farm, that is perpetrating poverty at those levels? So those are the millions of Nigerians that needs to feel the impact. So if you don't have programs and policies that deals with those, you can build all the bridges, you can build all the coastal highway. These persons that contribute to the GDP at those levels, the real GDP at those levels, they will not be impacted. So for us, those are clear, practical things we can do to deal with the issue of poverty. Secondly, we have the issue of social protection. How do we make sure that we are taxing more of the rich and the money is going to the poor? And that is not, we are not seeing that happen. Yes, we are taxing the rich, we are increasing tax brackets and all that. The tax bracket, we're increasing, the tax bracket is taxing more of those in the higher tax bracket. But the money now being translated in terms of social protection to the vulnerable people. Why can a country not be able to provide school feeding program for its citizens, for those in public school? Other countries are running it. Other countries are doing it. Even those that are within the middle income country region. So they are still doing it. So why can't we do those and be able to remove burden? I'll give you an example. I was in a school where an NGO was providing feeding for public school. And this particular day, when the program was launched, media and everybody were there, I was invited. And getting in there, I saw this particular girl. She just took her food. And when I just came to meet her about a minute or two after, her food has almost finished. I was like, oh, what happened? Did it pour? I'm like, no. She brought a plate from her home and she kept half of the food. She said, oh, it's for my brother and my sister. They don't have what they will eat. So this is what they will eat. I'll give them when I go back home. Those are the realities that we are faced with. And those are the issues of when we talk about poverty. Let's have basic necessities of life. Those basic necessities of life, the government should be able to provide. Not just the federal government. All eyes are always on the federal government. But let's hold our state governments accountable. Let's hold our local governments accountable. Let's know data. Let's know how much is going to these levels of government and what are they using it for. It's the right of the citizens to know, and until the citizens know this and start demanding it, and that's why protest should not be something that is seen as a luxury. If they refuse, we should be able to engage them from cooperation to confrontation, but non-violent at every point in time.
You know, speaking of what is available to the states now, President Tinubu says money to states, quote, is 4 to 5 times what they used to receive. In your view, why is this not translating to, real results on ground?
Accountability.
So let's also unpack that. So what do we need to do to make the government at that level, the subnational level, more accountable?
So a couple of things. One is if you pick the amount that is going to the states. So if I were the president, I would strengthen the monitoring mechanisms at the states. I would support civil society to be stronger at the states. But for political reasons, the president might not be able to do that, or would not want to do that, right? But if he's able to strengthen the accountability mechanism, the monitoring mechanism at the states, if we are able to have an EFCC that is proactive, not just targeting opposition states, but if we're able to have an EFCC and ICP that is proactive and working with civil society, I'll give you an example. We worked with the ICPC on constituency projects, and guess what? We recovered over 300 and something billion in one particular year of refunds because we, as civil society, were working with ICPC, and we discovered, ambulance were budgeted and they were procured. Where were the ambulances? They were in private hospitals. Tractors were budgeted, they were procured. Where were they? They were in private farms. So we worked with the EFCC, and all of those things, there were plea bargains, of course, and all of those things were returned. Those are examples of accountability. So if the government really, if the federal government wants this to happen, we have seen the president from whatever he wants to happen, he puts his might and his hand in it, it gets done. Yes, we operate a federal system. We operate a system where the states are independent, but you can support civil society to hold the government accountable. I think that's it. And of course, for us as media and civil society, we have a responsibility to generate an army of Nigerians that will be able to ask those critical questions. Where are the resources? I go to some of these states, and yes, you see some of the things happening, but in some of these locations, you are wondering, where are the resources? You are saying that the government is sending you, the federal government is releasing more money to you, but we're not seeing the impact in the lives of Nigerians.
So, in your view, where would you say the most corruption is embedded? Is it at the national level, or at the state level, or perhaps the local government level?
It's where you have more of the resources, which is the states. So the state has more of the resources. So the states, and again, don't forget that the states is where people live, or the local government, that's where people live. The federal government, of course, they have their own projects, and they're executed across the country. But the state get more of these resources, and they're able to, beyond their own internally generated revenue. So you're even looking at the FAC allocation. Beyond the FAC allocation, some states are generating trillions right now, more billions, and other. Lagos is getting to trillions, right? So how do you, at the state level, hold the Lagos state government accountable? So if you come, you have all sorts of taxes, and they hold us. We have a responsibility as citizens to pay our tax. So the same way I have a responsibility, I have my tax, and I hold it boldly to say I pay my tax fully. So if I pay my tax fully as a citizen of the country, I also have a responsibility to hold my local government chairman here in FCT, to hold Wike, Minister Wike, who is my minister, and to hold the president accountable, because I have fulfilled my own obligation as a citizen. So for us, for me, I think is at the state level that you have all that, but all three levels are where we should keep our eyes on, but not only at the federal, which is very common.
Ahead of 2027 elections, what issues, in your opinion, do you think should be on the front burner that perhaps we haven't been discussing?
I'll pick two or three things. One is election is an opportunity for citizens to, it's a referendum, to say we agree, you've done well, you've not done well. And that is why civil society, we are not so comfortable in pushing the state to a one-party system, a one-party state, where you have one party dominating the whole thing. We want a situation where you have fair competition. So we are discussing ideas, we are discussing programs, and not discussing which party is doing it and which party is not doing it. We're discussing programs, and citizens will then see that and be able to respond appropriately by either rewarding you or sanctioning you. So if you have done well as a party, that's the whole essence of democracy. So it's about we the people coming together and giving our will and might to the government to rule over us. And periodically, the government then comes to give account to us. So when the government comes to give account to us, we say, we agree, you've done well, or we disagree, you've not done well. But not forcing your own will on the people. The second thing that I would look at in the election is, how do we make sure that the votes of the people count? Yes, so the current INEC chair is saying that they will do all they can to make sure that there are no glitches, to make sure that transmission is done and we're able to monitor the result. But one important thing that is happening now is you have lots of vote buying. Lots of vote buying in different ways and forms. There are pre-election vote buying. As we speak, some people are sharing phones. Some people are sharing t-shirts, food, rice. So rice is a common thing and all that. So all of those are going across the country. Those are pre-election vote buying. Now, how do you then make sure that the person that has collected that rice does not go and thumbprint, is not compelled to thumbprint for a candidate that might not be his or her choice on that day, where you thumbprint and you have the opportunity to show somebody looking at you, and you have a police officer, you have INEC officials staying there and allowing that. So it's no longer the election is no longer transparent.
Would you say the people are complicit in their own impoverishment?
Now, poverty has been weaponized. I think they know what they do, right? So just watch it. Between now and the election period, lots of resources will be released. So a lot of things will be happening, right? To try to buy the people, to try to get the people to think that, oh, these people are working. And Nigerians are very forgiving. So they will just forgive you quickly and say, oh, this government is working. Oh, they are paying our salary. We had a case in Kogi State. They were not paid salary for months, for almost some years, 1.5 years or so. And it got to election period. Within 3 months, they started paying salary. They know what they're doing. So they weaponize poverty and wait for you. And in fairness, we had conversation with these people. And they say, some of them in the rural community, they say the only time we see these people is during election. And you are telling us not to collect the resources from them, not to collect the 10,000, 20,000. Oh, the calculation of if you collect 10,000 divided by 4 years is also amount. They say, I will collect it. So our conversation
but then others argue, collect and still vote your conscience.
Exactly. So collect and vote your conscience. But is hope INEC, hope the security agency, hope the political party agents will be able to enable the citizens to vote their conscience and not having an open ballot that we're supposed to have a secret ballot. Not having an open ballot where my thumbprint is known by the party agent even before I leave there. I must show it to them. So if you're able to manage that and ensure that it's a secret ballot, the person can collect it and vote his or her mind and go home scot-free.
On a final note, Dr. Mamedu, whoever wins in 2027 will inherit one of the world's largest populations living in multi-dimensional poverty. Do you think those seeking presidency truly understand the enormity of the work ahead?
Yeah, whoever wins the election, be it the current, if you look at the presidency, if you look at the current president, it's going to be an enormous task. If you look at the opposition, any of the strong candidates, any of them winning, it's going to be a strong task. So they need to understand the enormity of what we are faced with. And it's unfortunate that once after the second term, probably there's nothing left for this current president. If he wins, for instance, there's no motivation. So right now he probably would listen a bit more than he would do then. But we are hoping that the interests of the party, of his party, that's the possible continuity of his party, will be of paramount interest to him, because he would want to leave a legacy for him to be able to finish and hand over to some other person within his party. So if he wants to do that, he then needs to make sure that issues that are pertinent to Nigerians are addressed, and not just looking at it as, well, I've done my second term, I don't need to come back again, so whatever Nigerians do is their business. But don't forget, posterity will judge you. How did you govern Nigeria for 4 years or for 8 years? And if a new person comes, posterity will also judge you. If you probably come back for a second term, or even if you're not coming back for a second term, posterity will judge you. How did you govern Nigeria for 4 years? So democracy is not just about number. Democracy is about development, and development is about the people. So if the leaders do not understand that, they do not have any business being in power.
But on that note, thank you very much, Dr. Mamedu, for sharing your thoughts on
Thanks a lot,
the perspective. Well, there you have it. Dr. Andrew Mamedu says Nigeria can make significant progress in reducing poverty if government spending is redirected towards investment that directly improve the lives of Nigerians and respond to their most pressing needs. Now, that's our program for today. Thank you for watching The Perspective. I am Deji Owotumi. Bye for now.